Yahoy! I think I might be in. Hearing my own self there. Hello. Okay, so Kat is, of course, if you hadn't heard the great news, Catherine and I are going to be having a baby. She's about 13 to 14 weeks along, and she's not feeling too hot today. She's worn out. She actually worked a full day at Brave New Books when maybe she shouldn't have. So I'm going to be filling in for her, and I'm going to be giving you her message, which is very similar to my message, with a little bit of a twist. So she was going to speak about, and for those of you who don't know me, my name's John Bush. I am the education director for the Foundation for a Free Society, myfreesociety.com. It's one of the sponsors of this, and our mission is to educate, activate, and liberate. Educate people about the philosophy of liberty, activate them to give them tools and strategies to spread that philosophy, and encourage them to liberate themselves to live according to their sovereign ends, to their natural rights. I'm also the executive director of Texans for Accountable Government. It's a political action committee, and I'm going to be speaking on the Peaceful Evolution channel right after this. Catherine, of course, as many of you know, she's become quite the radical. She started off her activism with animal rights and anti-war, spending some time on the left, and then she was convinced that she's not a liberal as she thought she was. She's actually a Ron Paul libertarian. She was introduced to the ideas of Ron Paul. Thought she was a conservative for a little while, a little mixed up. Then she got introduced to libertarianism, the hardcore brand, and from there she's a consistent girl. She has a lot of integrity, and she always gives 110%. So that's 110% consistency. So wouldn't you know it, she eventually arrived at agorism and pushing for a totally free society, meaning no coercion whatsoever. The society is based entirely on voluntary associations. And what she wanted to talk about was individual actions and individual steps that people can take to transition from, say, a 9 to 5 living inside of the system, not just the government system, but the different types of systems that we all sometimes get enslaved by. For example, a dead end 9 to 5 job, maybe even a dead end relationship, a bad situation with family, maybe getting health as well. Health is something that you can be a slave to your own body and to your own diseases in a sense. So she wanted to talk about steps that people could take in order to transition away outside of all of those paradigms. And I'm going to mix in a little bit of how communities can take these same steps. So the discussion is going to be about individuals taking steps to transition themselves away from coercive institutions, away from coercive paradigms, programs, and systems, and towards a more free way of living as an individual. And then I'm going to throw in again some stuff what that communities can do as a whole to encourage the fostering of an environment where individuals can live according to their own ends as free individual people. So I'll start with the big bit that Kat was going on, and that's she started off working a 9 to 5 UPS for a while, managing a warehouse. Worked her way up to supervisor. She was a hard worker. Every single little career that she had, she excelled at. She made good money, was able to spend and enjoy herself, but she was trapped in doing something that she didn't necessarily believe in, or something that she didn't really motivate her or make her happy. Then, of course, as she came across the philosophy of libertarianism, she began to realize, well, first she was sucked out of it all because she was so obsessed with the good doctor and the message of liberty that it was promoting, and probably so frustrated at the same time that she really wanted to give it all that she could to spread that message and to help out the Ron Paul campaign. So she left some of those jobs and really dedicated herself to the cause for quite some time. And we hooked up in late 2009, and I quit my job working at a credit union, and we just hit the road spreading the message about the fusion centers. But before then, she was doing the Ron Paul thing, totally gave up her career and her comfort, used her 401k that she had saved up. Her pops taught her to save a percentage of your income, put it towards a 401k. Now we learned the lesson that that's probably not the best thing to do because it was robbed large percentages of it. But that 401k allowed her to live the life as a radical, pushing back on the man. And she did that. And then, coming to a big screeching halt, she realized, wow, my whole foundation, I spent it on fighting the man. And she learned, this is at the same time, she was learning about agorism and peaceful evolution and the idea of individuals living according to their own ends. The idea that the income tax is a coercive institution. The idea that we shouldn't fund the state. We shouldn't fund our own oppression is a line that she often drops. And um, so she decided, hey, I have these great talents and services that I've learned over the years, customer service, planning. She does strategic planning. She also was majoring I'm sorry, she got her undergrad and then she was working towards a master's degree in nonprofit management. And through that process, she learned how to do strategic plans. She's also learning web development. So she realized, Eureka, I have all these wonderful services. She also learned how to grow food as well, learned how to can food, which is a wonderful service as well. Eureka, I have all these skills that are valuable that I can give to the community. And she learned that you can also do this in the black market, competing in the counter economy. But one of the big lessons that I learned from Catherine Bleich, and it was even affirmed in an experience that I had helping someone out, is that if you learn a good skill or service that you eventually want to turn into agorism, even if you don't want to, if you want to turn it into something profitable, but even if you don't, it's always best to take this skill, this service, and to give it away, starting with the people in your family and your community and your peers, to build value in the community, to show everybody that it's not necessarily that you're driven, you're motivated by profit, even if you may be down the road, it works both ways, but that you genuinely want to build value in your community and offer the service to help people out. A lot of people learn services from the get-go, like web development or putting together YouTube videos, doing recording, audio recording. It's a big thing for social media within the movement. So the good thing to do is while you're learning this skill, while you're sharpening this skill, give it away. You'll be able to finish complete projects, add them to your portfolio, but more importantly, you'll build value within the community, and people will see that you're not just simply seeking to seek a profit, or you're not trying to exchange a service that somebody may not necessarily want. You're helping out. And you can also help out the activist cause. If there's any movements that you're involved with, any organizations, any causes that you believe in, you can offer up your services to them, build value, support the liberty movement, and also build value in yourselves. And you'll naturally find as this progresses, your value will grow and people will naturally come to you in order to have those services. And by now, there'll be a market for your services because you would be able to demonstrate that you can fulfill those services confidently. And people will now be willing to exchange goods or services, barter. Hopefully not Federal Reserve notes, but people will be buying your services. And we see this thing reoccurring quite often. Taryn Lupo does a great speech. I know he's going to be speaking on part of this one on starting a black market business. So if you have a skill or service, you can hone that skill by giving it away. Then you'll naturally find that people are desiring your skill, and you could become profitable because of that. Um, there was another lesson that Kat imparted on me from all this good stuff. And I guess I already espoused that lesson in building value in your community, growing the community, finding other people and propping other people up. That's what the second lesson is. Uh, in order to advance your cause, in order to build value in the community, it's important that you not only, um, selfishly, like an objectivist, not to throw a jab or anything to any objectivists or Randians out there, but rather than just focusing on yourself and lifting yourself up and advancing yourself forward, it's great to bring people along with you. So if you give a service or you trade a service and you have someone else that has a service as well and you're dealing with a particular client and they mention the need for the service that your friend provides, it's so important for you to go ahead and promote your friend, to promote your people, any opportunity that you have when it comes to the market, building a black market, but also when it comes to activism as well. If you have a radio interview or if somebody's interviewing you for a blog post or you're doing a live interview on TV, it's always great to mention the people around you because we all know that what makes us good as strong activists, strong, black market anarchists is the people around us, the community, the people that we surround ourselves. It's very hard to go, do a one-man job. Even Jesus Christ had people surrounded him, Martin Luther King as well. So it's always important that the people that you surround yourself with, they're the ones that help to propel you as well. And if you have the spotlight for a moment, or if people are appreciating your services, never forget to thank everyone else that's around you, and y'all can all grow together and advance, and it'll work both ways. People will appreciate that, and people will also want to lift you up as well. But the people that just focus on themselves, of course, pretty soon they'll find that they'll be left all alone in the community will be here helping each other up, and they may thought that they could have excelled and they didn't need anybody else or need to recognize anybody else. But what's going to happen is, sure, they'll excel over here, and then the others helping each other out will excel all the way up here, and they'll be left all alone. Or they can go take salvage with other assholes. But that's a lot of, again, the lessons that I learned from Kat. And the way that that works in the marketplace, of course, is if you have other people that offer services. A lot of services are tied together. For example, if you're offering social media or consulting, web development, so you can do a web service, but a lot of people want to have custom graphics, or a lot of people want to have Flash, or hook it into a database, or have YouTube videos alongside. So it's important to roll around and to keep your crew, let everyone know that you know people that offer services that combine with these services and lift each other up and provide each other opportunities to advance the black market. You can have yourself some sort of little Agorist black book, for example, where you list all of the services in your community that you know are being provided on a black or gray market. And whenever you're going out promoting your own black market business or doing your own activist cause, you can always refer back to your little black book and say, hey, I noticed you mentioned that your plumbing, there was a problem with your plumbing. I happen to know an agorist black market plumber who has a more affordable services. In fact, he takes silver and barters, so on and so forth. So those are different ways that you can individually, different actions that you can take within your community in order to build a better black market, in order to lift your community up, and in order to provide value as an individual, and that value will come back. There was a mentor of mine back in the day, his name was Chuck Young, and he said that the great thing about the organization we have, Texans for Accountable Government, is that we bring value, we bring shared values based on shared value. I think that was it. Shared value based on shared values is what it is. Shared value based on shared values. So you surround yourself with people that you share the same values with, and you share value, you bring value to them, and lifting up your community will bring value to yourself as well, and it will better the community, strengthen the bond, and you can use it as agorist to further the black market. Okay, so that's a big chat about markets. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I'll incorporate individual steps that you individuals can take in order to make this bigger picture thing possible within the discussion. But one of the things that you can do, one of the things I recommend, so we're trying to transition to a totally free society. It's going to be very difficult to make the existing coercive society go away. I do advocate certain types of political activism, pushing against the most coercive institutions that prevent individuals from living as free people, which I'll be talking about here shortly on the Evolution channel at 4 o'clock. But more importantly, I think, than that is we need to go ahead and build the groundwork and build the foundations for the free society. A little plug, Foundation for a Free Society. Build the foundations for a free society that we all dream of. We don't need to ask for the free society. We don't need to create the free society by eliminating the non-free society, and the free society will naturally come up. We need to go ahead and start building the free society. So I've been thinking about that process has slowly started to begin down here in Central Texas. Of course, a big shout out to the Free State Project. In many ways, they are actually building this free society. They're already on the way towards founding a free society, at least a more free society than you can find anywhere else in the United States of America. But I've come down with several components, about 7 of them to be exact. And these are different components that I believe are somewhat necessary, and we can all debate. And I've put them in order of importance in my opinion, but I think these are things that are necessary for the creation of a free society, a genuinely free society, some different institutions that will help grow that. There's 7 of them. Okay, so again, this is the whole idea of creating a free society within the existing framework of the coercive one. And there's different components that we can do to do that peacefully. Not even all of them are necessarily black market or illegal. Thank God in America we still have the freedom to grow a small garden in our backyard. Although, as we saw with Senate Bill 510, the food safety bill, that could slip away from us. But to hell with them, we're going to do it anyway. We're going to have numbers to protect ourselves. Okay, so speaking of that, the first component of founding a free society on your own is food self-sufficiency. This can take many forms, starting with a raised bed garden in your backyard, to setting up a community garden in your neighborhood, to founding or working with or building coalitions with local farms, to selling food at farmers markets, all the while advancing the message of liberty, of course. So individual steps that people can take towards doing this, towards moving away, and this goes back to the theme that I began with, that Catherine had mentioned, the transition away from not only slavery underneath the state, but also slavery from corporate hierarchical institutions and systems such as the corporate food production system, Monsanto, and all of these different food packagers. It's all centralized, of course, as we've seen in Japan. It's a very delicate, the food supply chains. There's no reason why we're not exempt from that here in the States. So what you can do as an individual to transition away from the dependency on these corporate hierarchical food systems is start a backyard food production system. There's actually a website, foodproductionsystems.com, I believe. This woman by the name of Marjorie Wildcraft, and she talks about how you can become self-sufficient growing food, raised bed gardens, goats, how to compost, how to slaughter a rabbit, and just about everything you could think of to set up shop in your own neighborhood. You'll find that there's already liberal communities, the modern sense of liberal, already modern liberals, progressives that are on the way to becoming food self-sufficient, and they're setting up community gardens and doing a lot of work in the community. So individual steps that people can take as a community and as individuals is set up a backyard garden, work towards establishing community gardens in your neighborhoods or in the neighborhoods of other people in your communities. Or one thing that I've noticed you can do, and this is a good way to counter the potential reaction from the state, because the state doesn't like it, as we learned with the von Nothaus and the Liberty Dollars. They don't like it when we compete outside of their system. So one way to counter that, if they ever bring their iron arm of coercion down on us, is to help out and do philanthropy in the community. So you can start community gardens and reach out. You can do your own garden and take the extra food to the lower income communities, to the economically underprivileged, as the politically correct would say, and you can give them food. You can do bread lines, you can pass out eggs, you can teach them how to grow their own communities. And the good part about it is, if the man ever tries to harm you, then the community will be up in arms. They'll say, wait a second, what are you doing? Those people just did a bread line down the road. They're not terrorists, unique terrorists, as the U.S. Attorney General said in the von Nothaus case. So that's one way that you can protect yourself while creating food self-sufficiency. So that's the number one component, and that's one that Kat has really grown fond of and that we've really learned about. This will also free you from not only the slavery of the state controlling food, GMOs, putting all sorts of nasty stuff in there, pesticides. It'll also free you from the corporate hierarchical food chain that you don't have to be dependent on, that is so fragile. But also it will assist in freeing you. Not everybody, there's a lot of healthy people out there. I'm on the road to getting more healthy than before. Never really took care of myself until recently, inspired by old Catherine Bleich. And you can also free yourself from yourself, from your own body, from diseases, from maybe an addiction to Coca-Cola, high fructose corn syrup, genetically modified foods, and a lot of stuff that's really unnatural. You'll be able to grow your own food. You'll know the whole supply chain was completely organic the entire way, and this is something that you can do in order to free yourself. You'll have better health, more energy, and you'll be able to fight the man or live free in a more happy manner. So that's individual steps that you can take as a community. I recommend you organize yourself and do this in a grand scale. So the first component of building a free society, I would say, is food self-sufficiency. And of course, it's agorist as well. If you take that food and grow it without getting some BS license or without the HOA approval, perhaps, and then you sell it. You can even sell at the farmers markets without getting a license if you want to go black market, or you could do gray market and just not license yourself and sell that food. You'll be able to compete in the counter economy, compete with the big wigs, and create a local economy that way as well. So that's food self-sufficiency. It's a great thing. The second component is competing currencies, barter economy, and the counter economy. So in order to build a free society, free and prosperous society, we're going to have to free ourselves from the grips of the value-robbing Federal Reserve note. I'm sure most people are familiar with the Federal Reserve Bank and how they print money out of thin air. Supply and demand kicks in, and the more dollars you have, the less valuable the dollars are. Not to mention they use the Federal Reserve note to fund multiple wars of aggression abroad. And they're using Federal Reserve notes to enslave us at home with the Department of Homeland Security. so on and so forth. FBI, yada yada yada. So I say to hell with end the Fed, start a competing currency, and the mofo will end itself. And it's interesting to say that on the heels of the unique terrorism comment again from the Liberty Dollar case. But one thing that you could do in order to compete with the Federal Reserve and in order to remove yourself from the dependency on the Federal Reserve is start using silver dimes or just silver in general. But these silver dimes are great. I know Drew Phillips is going to be speaking about that later on. They got this thing called wallet voting out in Phoenix, freedomsphoenix.com, walletvoting.com, what is this coin worth.info. I have one in the other room, not right on me. I could show you, but you can just check out the website and you'll be able to see it. It's basically a card laminated with it's a silver dime with a laminated card around it, and on the back it has a little chart about what silver is worth, what these silver dimes, silver quarters are worth whenever silver is at $35 an ounce or $30 an ounce. And you can put a logo of whatever you'd like on the front to promote things, but it's an educational tool. I appreciate it because it fulfills all three components of the Foundation for a Free Society's mission. It educates people about the devaluing currency. It educates people about devaluing currency and the importance to trade in silver, sound money. It activates people to take action and start talking to people and showing the cards to people. And finally, it liberates us from the dependency on the value-stealing Federal Reserve note by putting enough dimes out there and educating people enough about the use of silver that we can start using those notes ourselves. And it'll be a really big conundrum for the federal government to come after communities for using the silver dimes, which is like legal tender. And you could potentially have some fun little games with your income tax as well. Some people have taken pay in dimes and taken the face value, not the silver value, but operate at your own discretion, of course. So competing currencies, that's one way to do it. Encourage silver. Then you can organize local stores as well as your local competing black market, your counter economy, and come up with a listing or just have people be aware of the businesses, the agorists that accept silver. I would imagine every agorist just about would accept silver, but find a bunch of local businesses to start competing in them. And then the big kahuna comes whenever you can get these businesses to pay their employees in silver. And then for those people still politically participating, there's states that are starting to pass these legal tender laws allowing for these competing currencies. Of course, I recommend doing it anyway. But also some of these states might potentially be paying their employees in silver or accepting tax payments in silver. But of course, agorists shouldn't be paying that racket anyway. So local stores. Another thing you can do to create a counter economy or a barter economy is to organize swap meets in your community. This is an individual action that you can do. You can all go out there and get silver. You can all go out there and encourage local stores to join your coalition. You can all organize swap meets and do them as a community, so you get all the agorists together. And again, organizing with left liberal communities and democratic socialists even. Ooh, maybe avoid the democratic socialists, actually. We'll stick with the radical socialists, the anarcho-socialists, the anti-establishment lefties, a lot of progressives too. They're already doing a lot of stuff like this, so you can link up with them for these swap meets. Find a spot that's a community spot. It could even be a public location, and go show up and trade till your little heart goes blue. Another thing you can do, of course, as I mentioned at the beginning of the onset, is transition yourself away from the corporate structure and start doing agorist services in the black market, and start organizing these people, create the counter economy, which of course is black and gray markets. Black markets being illegal activity that people engage in anyway, like the sell and trade of marijuana, for example. Gray markets being non-licensed activities that would be legal if you ask permission first, of course. So grow that, grow that, grow that. Focus on that. Sometimes it might be a little less convenient. You won't be able to drive to the store to get your milk. You'll have to wait till tomorrow to drive to the local farm to get your raw milk. But don't allow the convenience to betray the potential that we have to create this counter economy. So whenever you are in demand of a good or service, try to check and see if there's any counter economic opportunities, any options. And that's something an individual can do. And of course, as you grow the community, these options will become more widely available and they'll become more widely known and acceptable as well. So growing the counter economy, doing swap meets and creating a barter economy, encouraging silver trade in the counter economy with local businesses as well to participate in actions like that, and purchase precious metals, silver, copper. Check out this walletvoting.com for a great idea to educate people and to promote the idea of sound money. Okay, so 1 and 2, that's food self-sufficiency, the first component, competing currency, barter economy, counter economy, the second component. The third component is where it gets a little bit interesting and it becomes a little more difficult. And this is the big one, even libertarians want the night watchman state. Even the minarchists say that the government should be there to protect our life, liberty, and property. The only thing that government should do is to uphold contracts and for protection, right? So, I'm an anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, whatever, call it what you will, but I believe that even that service could be better handled by the community and or the market. So the next third component of building a free society within the existing framework of the other one to compete with the coercive structures is private defense and the provision of justice. So here's some things that you can do to work towards this, to compete with the local police department, the state police department, the courts. And, this is where the caution comes up, because I think this is really when you start engaging in a little bit more of the radical steps, which are absolutely necessary. But those paving the way in this particular field deserve to be commended by their fellow radicals, because once we can step outside of the supposed need for their defense, we'll be able to free ourselves from that. And that goes with the general public as well. But more importantly, as the New Libertarian Manifesto says, you create the private competing defense in order to protect yourself and shield yourself from the coercive state structure. So, the thing you can start with, very simple, is a neighborhood watch program. If you live in a community or a subdivision, you can organize and start a neighborhood watch program. Many of them already exist. A lot of them are linked in with your local police department, even linked in with fusion centers even. And they call on people to fill out suspicious activity reports whenever they see anything suspicious whatsoever, or call in a suspicious activity report, or report it to the police instantly. You have a wonderful opportunity to, one, organize your own neighborhood watch. You could even have a competing neighborhood watch if there's an existing little tyrannical one. Or you can operate within the system that already exists, but don't use the state institutions and the state mechanisms that they'll encourage you to use, like call a police officer whenever. You can set up your own Twitter, Google group, Yahoo groups, set up a Weebly account or whatever for people to communicate. And then you can find out who on your block owns firearms, is educated in the use of firearms for defense, ex-military, veterans, ex-law enforcement even. Organize these people. Just let them be aware of where they are, and let each other know that you're willing to look out for your fellow community. And organize, set up a neighborhood watch. If you take over the existing one, a lot of times the positions are open, or you could unelect someone in your neighborhood homeowners association. Don't participate in the police, a lot of the police activities, because it's all about filling out suspicious activity reports. But this is a way, again, to promote awareness and to promote self-dependence when it comes to protecting your own community. Neighborhood watch, it's a good step towards private defense. Another one is get your people together, your activist community, and take self-defense classes. Learn how to defend yourself with firearms, but also, more importantly, because you don't want to just use a firearm like that. If you have other options to defend yourself, of course you want to use those first. Learn how to do hand-to-hand combat and defense strategies, defense techniques. I need to be more well-versed in that as well. Everybody does. And I think that's definitely something that'd be a first layer of defense. And then again, just knowing that you guys can defend yourselves and defend each other definitely goes a long way toward building this community. The second one has to do with the Second Amendment, of course. People, of course, have a right to keep and bear arms individually, tying back in with self-defense, train yourself, learn how to use these firearms for the protection of your home, your community. Some people, I know a lot of people on the libertarian, anarchist, voluntarist ring don't buy into this particular path particularly, but it is totally representative of competing defense, and that's Second Amendment constitutional militias, which exist all throughout the country. Sometimes they might not have the very same necessary ends we do, but they do represent an example, a real life example of individuals who are competing with the state for the provision of their defense, and they're even training themselves. This happened just recently. This is happening in Fairbanks, Alaska. A gentleman by the name of Schaefer Cox, who I had the privilege of meeting during the Continental Congress 2009 that I participated in with Catherine, where I actually met Catherine. They had a 3,500 man militia. They created a competing institution. They were basically closer to a free society than a lot of the freedom movement was. And they're more of the patriot movement, still the freedom movement, but these guys are patriots. They participate in a lot of Second Amendment stuff. They weren't even necessarily for restoring the republic or for they were more about just living free up in Alaska, and they managed to. This ties in with the second part, which is dispute resolution organizations and competing institutions of justice. Is these guys were doing such a good job up there that they actually had competing courts going on. They had set up a common law court system whereby the individuals that participate in their community, if someone harms another one or robs from another one or assaults someone else within their own community, they weren't going to the state-run monopoly injustice system. They were going towards their own common law court where everyone was on equal footing, and you would go before a genuine jury of your peers. The different parties would invite an individual to be the arbitrator, and the beauty of it all was whatever ruling they come down with, whether it's you need to recompensate, you need to make this person whole by returning the $5,000 that you stole from them, and also giving them $500 for what they had to do to miss whatever. It's voluntary that you agree with that. They never forced it with any force. There was no executive branch of their particular system of governance. There was no executive. So if you didn't agree with that, they didn't force you to do it with coercion with the police department. They just outlawed you. The same thing as ostracizing within the libertarian community. They outlawed the person. Oh, he's not going with our rulings. The community decided that this is the most just thing. He's ostracized. He's outlawed. And they were really they actually managed to fulfill the third component that I'm speaking about. They had a competing defense to protect themselves. And for the most part, the state and local police, they managed to build relationships with them. There's even news articles where they helped them out in different disputes that were taking place in their community. And so they had competing defense, they had competing courts. And I believe this is one of the reasons why Schaefer Cox, our good friend, is now in trouble and in jail on a very large bond, a couple $1,000,000 for bail. And it's because he actually created a competing institution for the state to compete with. And I'm very proud of him for that, but they targeted him because he was sticking up for his community. So that's just a word of caution on why this particular aspect of building a free society, the private defense, and coming up with your competing court systems is a little bit more, you should exercise a little more caution when doing so. But it's absolutely important and it's absolutely crucial, and it represents, one of the reasons, again, why they went after him, in my opinion, is because these guys were actually participating outside of their system, competing with it, and a lot of people were starting to catch on. Hey, wow, a little small society based on voluntarism and peace and actual justice. I might want to participate in that instead of this coercive one. So it was their own little form of agorism, and right now he's in jail. So check out standbyschaefer.com. Just a little plug there, standbyschaefer.com. There's a lot of stories. He's a great man that was actually doing this private defense in court here. So set up your own private defense institutions. It could be anything from just a mutual compact that you and your fellow brethren are going to look after each other. And then, of course, the final part is the competing justice systems. And I would recommend institutions of dispute resolution organizations. That can be how the market can solve it. There's already some that exist up in the Free State. They exist all over the country, actually. It's actually a pretty big service that's offered, dispute resolution. You can do that, or you can simply come together with a small little community court, whatever you want to call it. It's all semantics, but the two parties come together. They agree to a mutual third party to act as the arbiter. You could even bring on your own small juries. Just the important idea is that the people in your community, your peer group, you're surrounding yourselves by them voluntarily. So you're more inclined to agree with their precepts, and some people may be willing to put their fate in order to solve the dispute in the hands of a small little jury of their peers. But of course, Stefan Molyneux talks a lot about dispute resolution organizations. That's all over there. So the third component of building a free society is private defense and competing courts. First component is food self-sufficiency. Second component is competing currency. barter economy, and counter economy. And the third component is private defense. Can anybody guess what the fourth component should be? Does anybody have any fourth components? I just want to make sure that everybody's still there listening. Fourth component, I'll type here. Well, my fourth component is communication. It's important that we have a means to communicate with each other for all sorts of different reasons. Communication also assists in getting out the liberty message, in promoting events that could be potentially going on, but communicating amongst each other. So one way to start would be, and I've been to the Free State a few times now, and I gotta say I love what the Free Staters are doing up there. Every time I go up there, I end up ripping off some ideas. But that's what competition's all about, right? And it's a free idea, a marketplace of ideas, and those guys are really doing it great up there. So one thing to start with, of course, is the most local communication, which is little radios that you can carry around, and different people can have them. You can have these during events, or if you live in a small town, you'll be able to communicate with each other whenever. And that's something that they're doing up there, and that's something easily that an individual could do. Just pick up a radio, tune to the same frequency. Shortwave is another thing to communicate with other communities around, other like-minded communities. We can even have networks of shortwaves and networks of smaller radio bands going all across the country, linking us all together. There's a lot of pirate radio going on as well, which is a beautiful thing. 90.1 FM is broadcasting here down in Austin, loud and clearly. It has been for 3 or 4 years. Been pulled off and on a couple times by the FCC. I know in New Hampshire they're dabbling with pirate radio all across the country. One thing you can do in order to avoid some of the FCC hogwash is consider setting up an AM array. I'm just hearing there's a radio discussion going on here in 10 minutes. Not sure if it's going to be this channel or one of the other channels, so that's great to continue that. I know Ian Freeman's doing one on pirate radio as well. Consider local AM radio networks. You can actually pump out a small low power transmission that will go out a mile or two if you really tweak it and you have good conditions that can stay under the FCC regulations. So, of course, again, black market, who cares? To hell with them, but they will show up and they will attempt to use force eventually if it comes down to that. But one way you can avoid that altogether is just using an AM setup and doing an array and a mesh. So consider that AM. You can put out your favorite shows. You can stream LRN.FM, whatever you'd like. You can put up local activists to do shows. You can also use this to encourage your counter economy and your competing economy and your barter economy and promote the swap meets by doing little public service announcements. Also setting up Porcupine 411 style communication devices, communication systems. Porc 411, many people are probably familiar with that. You can text in, you can Facebook a message, and it just goes out to all your peeps. They're using it if someone gets pulled over. I'm going to mention, too, also the guys up in Fairbanks, Alaska with Schaefer Cox. They had what they call the Liberty Bell. When someone gets pulled over, they show up. It's interesting, Schaefer actually got in trouble because he showed up to a Liberty Bell event, and he was concealed carrying apparently, and he didn't report it, which is absolutely necessary. You must bow to them and report your firearms when you walk up to them, even though he wasn't even competing in their system and he didn't voluntarily agree to that. But he was responding to a Liberty Bell call. They look out for each other. And the local and state law enforcement were aware of it, and everything was going smooth and kosher until the feds got involved. But that's not to deter. But yeah, it's just the same thing as Porcupine 411. We're in the works of setting one up here in Austin. Hopefully, we've been trying to for quite some time. And that's a wonderful way to communicate and support your local community. That goes into the private defense as well and the protection. A lot of these different aspects, they overlap in many different instances, and you can get this wonderful mesh of black market anarchist liberty going on. Also consider doing marine band radio transmission as well. You'll be able to get a lot of good information long range from that and be more left alone by the man. So that's the fourth component. We got food self-sufficiency, competing currency, barter economy, counter economy, private defense, competing courts, communication, and the fourth component is, I'm sorry, this is the fifth component. The fifth component is the social component. So you can have monthly socials, bi-monthly socials, weekly socials, like in Keene they do the Social Sundays. They used to meet at Murphy's Tap Room, I think, in Manchester. Again, Free State Project is already illustrating this, just blowing it away on all these different aspects. They already have many of them up off the ground. Big fan of the Free State Project. We're starting to build a lot of these same institutions and community-driven things down here in Austin too. But we're learning a lot from the Free State Project. They have monthly socials. They have an annual Pork Fest, big camp out event where people just come and grow the counter economy, grow the community. It's absolutely a beautiful thing. They also do an annually educational conference, the Liberty, what's it called?
Liberty Forum.
Liberty Forum. That's catchy here.
You're over on time.
I'm over on time?
So it's ended 45.
Oh, okay. Okay, I imagine I'm still going. I'll wrap it up. So there's a social component, of course. Involved in that is also community philanthropy that people can do to get involved with community philanthropy. Again, that will back up everything else. You can even do Liberty conferences as well and get people involved with that. Grow the competing economy through that as well. People can set up booths and shops, but also you'll be able to bring in the non-libertarian community to educate them about the things that you're doing in order to compete better with the state. The sixth component is educational. Set up a counter university where Austrian economists teach economics and where libertarian activists, you bring in Stefan Molyneux to teach the children and to teach college-age students as well. Set up homeschool groups. That's striving very well down here in Texas. Set up little small homeschool cooperatives with you and 5 families if it's in a small community. One day a week, one family takes the kids and teaches them. You all go together to the museum and stuff like that. Educate people about that. And again, this ties in with communication. Educate the rest of the community through your radio programming. And the seventh component, this one's not absolutely necessary, but this is one that I'm throwing in, is the political component. If you have a PAC of some sorts or a political organization that can push back on coercive institutions, which I'm about to talk about. I've been rambling here for an hour. My next talk's going to be at the Peaceful Evolution channel, and it's going to be in voluntarist justification for political activism within a coercive, monopolistic institution. But you can have a political component whereby people that want to participate inside that system can go participate inside the system, but they laser focus on those institutions which prevent the rest of us from living freely and genuinely being able to live as anarchists without having state interference. And that comes down to pushing back on sobriety checkpoints, fusion center activity, checkpoints in general, freedom of travel, and good stuff like that. And also with the political branch can come civil disobedience towards political ends. People can simply just live free. Okay, so the 7 components are food self-sufficiency, competing currency barter economy, counter economy, private defense, competing courts or provision of justice. The 4th component is communication. The 5th component is a social component. Grow your community. That's probably one of the most important ones, really. I guess you can't grow a community if you're not eating, though. But and then the 6th component is educational, private institutions, competing universities, and the 7th one, which isn't absolutely necessary, is political in order to push back and spend some time to make this a lot more attainable and allow you to do this with less intrusion. So I guess I've gone over my time. Thanks for tuning in. This was part of Catherine Bleich's speech. Kat Bleich, you can check her out at don'ttreadoncat.com. We also co-founded OperationDefuse.com to do some fusion center activism. I'm doing something called MyFreeSociety.com, the Foundation for a Free Society. We go over a lot of these aspects of living as free sovereign individuals. Big thanks to Agora.io, George Donnelly, Ethan Lee Vita, everybody that put this together. It was absolutely amazing, paving the way. This is part of the educational component and the communication program and the social component all mixed into one. And thanks for all the hard work. Peace, live free, yeah.